Up and Adam.
Tractor systems are offline.
We are Beyond FM.
Beyond FM.
The future of broadcasting is here.
Up and Adam with Adam Montiel. It's community content from Concentrate. It's Up and Adam with Adam Montiel.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Yes, some say life is just where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Happy Tuesday. Let's go. Thank you for being Up and Adam. My name is Adam Montiel. Thanks for connecting here today on a kind of a true crime Tuesday. Today's episode is going to have a really fun interview with a fun guest, but it will also very much bleed into that true crime Tuesday too. Today's guest, he was a heartthrob. The heartthrob with depth, I will say, on TV's Boy Meets World. But what happens when that same voice starts questioning everything he thought he knew about his own past? Actor Ryder Strong joins us to talk about his new podcast, The Red Weather, a haunting, genre-bending audio experience that blurs the line between true crime, fiction, and something much more real and personal. This isn't just a story about a disappearance. It's about memory, identity, and the stories that we tell ourselves to make sense of where we came from, our childhood, our past. From growing up in a kind of a commune-like community in Northern California, some weird stuff this dude saw as a kid, to revisiting the 90s with a more honest, critical lens, this conversation really goes somewhere real. I'm really excited to bring it to you. And at one point, it even gets personal in a way that stops you in your tracks. You're not going to want to miss this one. Actor Ryder Strong, The Red Weather. This show doesn't just tell a story, it kind of interrogates the way we tell stories. It questions who gets to tell them. And it kind of asks why we're all so addicted to true crime in the first place. Ryder Strong is coming up next. This one's going to stick with you. I can't wait to intro you to Ryder. Before that, well, look, they said it was going to rain today. If there's one day this week where we might get some showers, let me see if it's still in the forecast, because it was as of early this morning. What did they say, like 50% chance? Now I'm looking, it doesn't even say it will. So we may be away from the rain or the chance of it. And just mild temps, for the rest of the week. Wednesday, Thursday, all the way through, you're seeing temps in the mid 60s with some cloudy skies. Weekend looking good though, even warm, temps in the low to mid 80s, and then we'll be cooling down once again. So a little bit more like spring. All right, before we get into our chat with TV's Ryder Strong, I want to tell you about our new friends supporting the show, Mountain Air. A place in SLO. You don't last a long time unless you're doing something very right. And the Mountain Air has been doing it right since like 1975. Right there on Marsh Street, they've helped generations of locals get outside. All skill levels, hiking, camping, climbing, heading to the snow, even, whatever it is. But what I love, they're very hyper-local. Started by Wayne Patterson, now owned by Josh and Lindsay Herring, who were part of it long before they even took it over. Raising their family right here in SoCal, living it, not managing it from somewhere else. And when you really get it, you feel that when you walk in there, you just get it. It's not overwhelming. It's not transactional. It's just dialed in. People who know what you need, even if you don't quite know how to ask for it yet. And if you are headed to the snow, they've got the only full service ski and snowboard repair and rental shop in the county, which tells you everything. So don't go to that big store with the 3 letters. Come on, we got a local one right here on Marsh. Just a couple doors down too, they have what they call the Switchback. It's their sister shop where you can buy and sell used gear, so your stuff gets another run. Someone else gets their shot at it. This is what I love about local advertising, and this is what it's all about. Real business supporting real communities and keeping that connection right here at home. And if you stop by, do let them know that you heard about them on Up and Adam. It means a lot. And say thank you for not just keeping it local with who they serve, but keeping it local with the dollars that they earn. I mean, they're supporting local broadcasting here on Up and Adam. That matters. Learn more, themountaineer.com and theswitchback.com. The Mountain Air, San Luis Obispo. So excited. Stoked to have them Up and Adam.
It's Up and Adam with Adam Montiel.
All right, he was Shawn Hunter to a generation of kids who grew up watching Boy Meets World. The kid with the complicated home life, the big heart, and the best lines. But Ryder Strong never stopped at the credits. He went on to Columbia, earned his MFA, directed TV, wrote for the stage, and now he's done something genuinely unlike anything else in podcasting. A series called The Red Weather, where he plays himself, investigating a fictional cold case tied to the communes and complicated communities he grew up around in Northern California. So it's part true crime, it's part memoir, and it's kind of an interrogation of the whole true crime genre itself. It's really good. It's really unique. Ryder Strong, man, thank you so much for being Up and Adam.
Of course. Thank you, man. Yeah, this is early for you too. You're on the West Coast, right?
Yeah, right. I love that background too. That's the crib.
Right, yeah, this is my office.
I love it. That's cool. I love all the books. That's great. So look, man, there's something about going back to where you grew up, the people, the energy, the stories that you thought you understood, and then suddenly as an adult, they don't feel like so clear anymore. In The Red Weather, you're not just telling a story, you're kind of interrogating your own memory inside of it. So I'm curious, when did you realize that memory isn't truth, it's narrative?
Wow, good question. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like a lot of this came from just the realization that I had all these situations around me where I grew up I grew up in the 80s in the redwoods of Northern California, and like the scene around me was just super interesting. Small town, and I'm even outside of that small town. My parents were sort of this back to nature, they like built the house we grew up in, and but we were surrounded by even more complicated situations, multiple families living together in some sort of commune, some may say cult situations. There were just a lot of weird things, and I didn't understand any of it, but I also never questioned it. I just kind of took it for granted. It was just like, oh yeah, my buddy Ocean lives on this property with like his mom and his dad, but his mom and dad aren't together, and they have other partners, and there's all these buildings for the commune that they were going to start that failed, and we would just camp out in these buildings, and we'd be like, what was this place? But I never asked him because I just didn't know. So like part of The Red Weather was me like tracking Ocean down, and we're still best friends to this day, and being like, hey dude, what was going on? I don't know the story. Like, can you tell me? And like, I hope it's not rude for me to ask, but like, what was up with your dad? And like, what was going on here? And so getting those stories is like, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe that's just midlife. Like, I think you just hit your 40s and you start maybe seeing these things for what was actually going on,
Dude, you're so right. I mean, you've played characters your whole life, but this time, like, the character is you and not a polished version, like a searching version. So I'm curious, like, what's more vulnerable, like playing a fictional character who's falling apart or playing yourself while you're still figuring shit out?
That's a really good question, man. I think most people would say it's easier to play a fictional character. I found it easier to play me. I found it more relaxing. I think that there's, part of the reason that I don't act anymore is because I used to feel this pressure to be something that I'm not, which probably harkens back to when Boy Meets World was a hit. And as a teenager, I found myself in this weird, like, teen idol category. And I wasn't prepared for that. Like I liked acting. I liked playing characters, but I felt like I was a bad teen idol. Like I felt ugly. I felt like I wasn't interested in all the same things that other teen idols were supposed to be into, whether that was like surfing or sports or I don't know. Like I felt like I was not living up to the expectations. And so I think I carried that into my later acting career, where I just felt like I was always, supposed to be this character or this leading man or something that I couldn't quite be. And so for me, being able to write myself as a character and insert myself as a character and to be honest about my vulnerabilities and my failings and where I am horrible at being a detective and horrible at being a friend or whatever it is that I put into The Red Weather, I found that kind of soothing and kind of like it gave me permission to like be more honest and to relax a little bit. So yeah, I weirdly, I just based on my my own weird experience, I think for me, it's easier to be vulnerable as myself.
Yeah, almost like embracing that imposter syndrome helps you kind of conquer it in a way.
Exactly.
know?
Well put. Yeah,
You
well
know,
put.
True crime. I mean, gosh, massive genre. We consume it, we binge it, we analyze it. But there's, in San Luis Obispo, we have that Christian Smart case up here. And it's weird when there's a real human, because there's always a human real cost somewhere in the DNA of those stories. You don't quite learn that until it becomes locally in your backyard. You built the Red Weather to question true crime itself in a way. So where do you personally draw the line between a compelling story and exploiting one?
Wow, man. I don't know where I draw the line. That's really what I wanted to explore. It's the question is exactly right. Like, I don't know. And I think the part of the Red Weather was a response to the ickiness that I feel when I listen to some of this stuff, because there is a prurient interest that we have in these things. We all slow down to rubberneck an accident, and that's I feel like it's our human instinct. We love gossip. We are drawn to darkness. We are drawn to these kinds of stories, these extremities, and they scare us. I think that there's a way to be respectful often with true crime. I think that I think what police do is remarkable, and I would never want that job. But I think that I think that there's a way to be respectful. Mostly what I am criticizing or what I'm responding to with the Red Weather is I feel like there is a strain of true crime that is not only somewhat exploitative, but also this sort of white knight thing where some dude, and it's usually a dude, is like, I'm going to solve this crime.
Yeah.
And I have no relationship to this missing girl or this situation, but I'm going to be the dude who's going to solve it. And I know that it's not always that intention, but that's how it comes across sometimes. And I really I listened to a lot of those podcasts, and I found them maybe exciting and thrilling in the mystery element, but I also was kind of like, what's up with you, buddy? Like, why do you make this all about yourself? And, one of my favorite, my favorite true crime podcast, I will say, is this Canadian one called Someone Must Know Something. And that's been going for a long time. And it's so Canadian and beautiful in that the host is less interested in solving crimes, even though he has ended up doing that. Most often he's interested in just getting to the human aspects of these stories and sitting with the victims' families and just talking to them and understanding their experience, and not necessarily how can we find out what happened to your daughter, but just more what's it like? Let's talk about the sense of closure that you do or do not have. And that was a huge inspiration for me, because that was sort of what that was the ideal version of a true crime podcast. And so I made sure that Ryder, the true crime podcaster in the Red Weather, is not doing that. He's actually the worst exploitative version until he's not. I really wanted to play with that and take it to an extreme.
Yeah, you start this whole thing by talking to people about growing up around what, like you said, some would call this maybe a cult. And that word alone carries so much weight, judgment, curiosity, right? Fascination. Yeah. So when you look back now, do you think we're a little too quick to label communities as cults, or maybe we're not quick enough to question these communities?
It's such a good question, man. I really don't like the word cult for exactly what you said. I also just think that when a cult gets big enough, it just becomes a religion. So I don't see that much of a distinction. I am reading a book right now called Cults Like Us by a woman named Jane Borden. That is brilliant. And her main thesis is that the first cult in America were the Pilgrims. They were a group of people who broke off to create their own religious sect. And her contention is that America is riddled with cult-like thinking, and whether it's self-help books or Scientology or whatever, we have so many examples, or Mormonism, which is now a mainstream religion. We have so many examples of things that sort of begin within a cult-like framework, and then whether they grow out of that or not. So I think in a lot of ways, cults are actually incredibly natural. I think most of us want to be a part of a community. Most of us want to not have to think for ourselves, but actually give over to, we're tribal people. That's what we are. We're supposed to exist in tribes. So for me, like, I think this is why we're all so intrigued by cults, is because we sit there and we hear about these, somewhat crazy things that people do, like obviously in the extreme examples of Jonestown or Heaven's Gate, they kill themselves. But otherwise, you have people that give up their money, they give up their lives, they ignore their family for a group, a new community. And we say, like, that's so crazy. How could they have ever let themselves get into it? And of course, like, we all join cults in some form or another in our own way. And I think the point is, you never join a cult. You never think of it as a cult. You just think of it as like this cool group of people I want to hang out with, this acting class I want to take, or whatever it is. And you just, so I think we all have a little bit of cult-like thinking built into us. And I think it's important to recognize. And while we can judge the end behaviors and the sort of negative effects of, like, people losing their, finances or their lives or their mental health or
Drinking the
physical
Kool-Aid.
bodies. Yeah, drinking the Kool-Aid. I do think that we can have sympathy for the fact that we probably, given the right circumstances, would all love to be a part of something bigger than ourselves and join a cult in some capacity.
Super insightful answer. I love that. Let's talk 90s nostalgia for a second, because especially lately, that meme we're all seeing now, like, what were you like in the 90s? I mean, there's this warm glow that we have about the 90s, especially for people who grew up watching Boy Meets World. It feels safe, simple, almost like too innocent. But your podcast kind of peels that back. So what do you think we've been romanticizing about that era that, shoot, as we get into our 40s now, might not have been so innocent?
Yes, it's like so much. I think that, a big part of Red Weather, if not the essential part, is the casual misogyny of the 90s, the sexism, the homophobia. I intentionally built that into this podcast because I find it, like, I found myself very much playing into that as a teenager, without even thinking about it. Like, you look at episodes of Boy Meets World, but even, you watch episodes of Friends, like, gay panic is just always there. It's like, oh my God. And then the way the women are treated, even on Boy Meets World, when we talk about, like, the character development that somebody like Danielle's Fishel's character with Topanga is allowed, like the sort of the category that she exists in as a female is just not, she just does not have the same character development as the male characters do. So, like, those are like the primary thematics of the Red Weather, is like, hey, like, we look back on this time and we think it was, probably safe and wonderful in so many ways, but there's a lot of crap going on. And that's not to say that we are now in such an enlightened, better era. It's actually just to more complicated. That what I'm hoping is more complicated than that, is saying that no matter what era you're in, you have blinders on. No matter what period, we're going to look back 20 years from now, and our kids are going to be like, what were you thinking doing the things that you're doing? And so being aware of that and, like, not letting nostalgia fool you. I tend to think of, like, the way that I love nostalgia. I feel it in my bones. I just want to, like when I held a pager for Red Weather, it was like truly brought me back. When I still love CDs, I still have my laser discs. Like, I do, like, and the music, like, I'm the guy driving around listening to Counting Crows. Like, I do love all this stuff, but you have to recognize that is a trap, and that you're actually, you're putting back on the blinders you had when you were younger in some capacity. And that's okay, as long as you know that you're doing it, as long as you know, like, it, like, life wasn't less complicated. It wasn't necessarily better. It was always full of, awful things and murders and sexism or racism or all these awful things were happening in any era. And so I think you can enjoy the memories, but I also, like, this is what I call, like, cracked nostalgia. Like, I like looking back and I'm recognizing that the lens is a little cracked that you're looking back through, and that it was cracked back then. Right. So it's okay to enjoy and to experience, but also be aware that we're always a product of our time, whether it's now or then. And I think as long as you're okay with that, and you can, I think unabashed, like, acceptance of the past is better. politically, I think is horrific. I think that's where like a lot of major conservative movements that go wrong, this sort of knee-jerk reaction of like, it was better back then. It's like, was it? Because I don't think that's true. So politically, I think it's a real trap. But I also think culturally it can be a trap.
So good. Oh, you had me till Laserdisc. You keep your Laserdiscs, dude?
Yeah, dude. I just bought some new ones. I went to a convention. Because we do these pop culture conventions where we sign autographs.
Right.
And there was a guy who had a Laserdisc booth, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm buying.
It's on, yeah. So check this out. Ryder, listening to the Red Weather, it hit something personal for me because years ago, a friend of mine, Jimmy Ferris, died in high school, late 90s.
Oh.
And I recently talked to one of the men convicted of killing him. He was 18 at the time. Because of California's felony murder rule, he wasn't the one that wielded the knife, but he was still convicted of first-degree murder.
Oh my God.
And decades later, after he was, this sentence commuted by Schwarzenegger, the governor, and then parole, I found myself having this like hour-plus conversation on the phone with this guy who I've followed forever, and it's just wild. And I'm so curious, like when you step into a story that isn't just interesting and fascinating, because this story came right after OJ. It made national news, Rolling Stone magazine, documentaries, like it was a big story. When there's real emotion and real history, real weight, how do you decide what your responsibility is as a storyteller versus as a human being?
God, that's really tough, man. The reason that the Red Weather is fiction is because I wanted to avoid the exploitation factor. I personally, I'm not brave enough to do the real journalistic work of having those kinds of conversations like you're talking about. I would much rather do it in a fake context or a fictional context. And I think there's a way to do it very respectfully. And I think there's a way to capture the human emotions around those situations without being exploitative. But we're a storytelling species, and unfortunately, people are drawn to the worst. And I think that you can tell. I feel like I'm media savvy enough now that I can tell when I'm being manipulated by a podcast or manipulated by a documentary, manipulated by a journalist. And I hope more people start learning how they're being manipulated. I mean, that's part of the project with the Red Weather for me, is to highlight that a little bit and underline it and be like, even though this is a fake situation that I'm investigating, I'm criticizing Ryder as the investigator as much as I can, because I think that there is a responsibility to be respectful and to do this right. And in my case, in my fictional story, Ryder does not do it right. He bungles it left and right. And I'm hoping that is instructive, and I hope that that's reflective of what you should not do. But unfortunately is being done on a pretty regular basis.
I have questions about Shawn Hunter, because looking back now, how much of Shawn was something might have been you were playing versus something you were kind of processing in real time. But I'm really more curious, and always have been, I'm more curious about the name Ryder Strong. It sounds like a character of someone you would write. It's, not just a kid who's trying to get through his adolescence on TV. What was it like growing up with that incredibly awesome name? Did it feel like a superpower? Was it incredible in your 20s? Was it something you grew into? Tell me all about living with this incredible name.
That's funny, man. I loved it when I was a kid. It never seemed weird where I grew up. Everyone had weird names. Like I said, my best friend was named Ocean, spelled Oshyan.
Wow.
I knew so many, unusual names, like a lot of kids named after jewels or natural objects. So I never felt like Ryder was that weird. And then when I was 16, the movie Boogie Nights came out.
Oh man.
And the idea of giving yourself a porn name became mainstream culture. And then everybody realized that Ride Her Strong is like the ultimate porn name. And so then I would say from like 1996 until 2008, I hated my name because that was all anybody would reference and talk about. And I had people just, even if they didn't know who I was, they would just, if they learned my name. I had a doctor one time, I went to a physical and he's like, Ride Her Strong. What, did your parents hate you? I'm like, oh, thanks, dude.
Yeah.
People have just, I will say, like, yeah, it's particularly within like white communities. Like non-white communities are fine with the name Ryder for whatever reason. Like they don't even bat an eye. But it's mostly like uptight white people who get a little like, no, you got to have a normal name. Go back to like regular Anglican.
Right.
I don't know. But no, now that the porn star thing is like died away, I love my name again. I'm totally
good for you. You deserve to. You're such a good sport. I really loved this conversation with you, Ryder.
Yeah,
I would love to connect again. Thank you so much for the time. We got all the links in the show notes to the Red Weather. And man, thank you so much for being Up and Adam, my man.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Great questions, man. Thank you.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again.
Great chat. Thanks to Ryder Strong. From crack nostalgia to cult thinking to why you find it easier to be vulnerable as yourself than as a character. That was one of those chats I don't know. That really sticks. Good stuff, man. 8 episodes. Do yourself a favor. Start them today. iHeartPodcasts. Available wherever you listen. All the links for the Red Weather and everything Ryder Strong in the show notes. Come back anytime, man. Fun chat. All right, like I said, looks like we've escaped the chance of showers today, but mild temps, cloudy skies, temps in the mid to upper 60s today. Hope you're having a great week. Got a local show tomorrow. Excited for it. Also, there is a podcast that I'm not going to get into today because I don't want to confuse too much podcast chat, but there was a podcast that got recommended to me recently. I went in, binged the absolute crap out of it. It was so good. And the thing is, this crazy podcast takes you through slow, takes you definitely into Paso, and it might even have something to do with someone you know. Put it this way. This podcast talked to some local people, and I was like, I know that voice. I've interviewed that voice. I text her up and I go, hey, I'm just listening to blah, blah, blah podcast. You're Sarah. And she goes, yup. Oh my God. So I go, will you talk on the show? She said, yes. This podcast, again, we'll talk about it tomorrow, but I'll tell you what it's called if you want to go look it up and start on it. It's Unraveled, season 4, Snowball. I guess every season is named something. It's a New Zealand dude. And he meets this girl who's full on, I don't know, she could still be local. Last time I checked, and the way this podcast ends, and don't worry, I'm not spoiling anything, she lived here. So we'll see. We will see, but it got turned on to me by some distillers in Paso, Luke and Max Hudson. And they're like, how does nobody know this podcast is literally about this area? It goes in other places too, but has such a huge piece of its puzzle to this area. How does nobody know about it? Because it's crazy. And the podcast is pretty wild. It's freaking crazy. So we'll talk about that. Also get a little into it too. I'm excited for that. So anyways, all right. I hope you have a great day. I want to thank Moonshiner Collective for being Up and Adam, giving us local music on the show called Start Again. Check them out. Check their original music out anywhere you stream. And also moonshinercollective.com. What else? Of course, our friends Josh and Chiasa Clapper. Love them. Timbre Winery, Timbre. TimbreWinery.com. Check them out. And I thank them very much for giving us the Timbre Lowbro Studios. Also, thanking you for connecting here. If you can, take time, rate, review, subscribe to wherever you're listening, but also if you're on Apple Podcasts, if you're there, taking a minute to write a review with a 5-star rating, you have no clue just how much good it can really do, traction it can really give us. So thank you in advance. Appreciate you more than you know. Hope your week is going great. Enjoy your Tuesday till tomorrow. I'm Adam Montiel. Thanks for being Up and Adam.
Some say life is where it begins. Straight to the stars is where it ends. Only to start again. Let's start again. We'll start again. Let's start again.